Welcome everyone to Take Your Punch Process Paperless with Bluebeam Review, presented by CAD Technology Center. We're very happy to have Nick Decker from Bluebeam with us today. Nick is a Senior Industry Specialist at Bluebeam Inc., and he'll be giving the presentation. My name is Ben Ragsdale. I'm with CTC, and just a reminder that CTC is a Bluebeam Platinum partner. Please reach out to us with any questions or for a quote for Bluebeam Review. You can call us at 866-941-1181 or email us at info@cadtechnologycenter.com. And without further ado, here's Nick.
Great. Thanks, Ben, for the introduction. As he mentioned, my name is Nick Decker. My role within Bluebeam is, as you see there, Senior Industry Specialist. So I specialize in workflows for the AEC industry and kind of trend toward field work specifically. And so this punch process webinar that we're going to go over today is very applicable for a lot of different individuals as it will discuss the ins and outs of being able to kind of obviously take it paperless, but also make it much more efficient by tracking the data that you're collecting in the field kind of in one foul swoop and then leverage that downstream for reporting and things like that. Now we'll go through the specifics here in a moment, but for those of you viewing the screen right now, you should be able to see that this is an AIA webinar. And so for those of you that are interested, just a quick slide here. For those that are looking for AIA accreditation, one, this is being recorded. However, you will be needing to view this live and on your own computer to receive AIA credit. Also, the material that's covered here obviously is not constructed or endorsed by AIA, but does count toward a continuing education course. As I mentioned, this is being recorded and will be distributed after the fact. Also, if you do have, if you need a certificate saying that you completed this course afterwards, feel free to contact us and we'll provide you one of those as well. Now, on to the course description specifically. There are a couple quick statistics that are there, tracking and distributing punch lists 65% faster and achieving 90% accuracy on punch processes. Those are a couple statistics that we've received from clients that have implemented this process. But the overarching idea is that you can go through the punch process to capture all this field data and everything that goes along with it much quicker than was previously possible in the paper world. Now, the list of learning objectives, and this is a very short, concise list. We'll go over more than what you're seeing here. But it really starts with creating and customizing your existing interface and the tools that you'll be using as you go through your punch process. We'll also learn how to capture video and image information from field walks and be able to embed that into markups to provide some sort of locational context. Also getting into spaces, which will, again, provide some sort of locational context to your markups, as well as custom statuses and columns. All of this kind of drives toward that data collection aspect that I touched on earlier, and so we'll get very heavy into that space of being able to run reports of anything that may or may not be an issue in the field and how to fix that as you go through this project closeout aspect. The final aspect or learning objective listed here is how to utilize studio sessions to complete those punch walks. Now, studio sessions is kind of unique in that it's basically a live environment that all of your project stakeholders can hop into and work with your files kind of all at once. They don't have to worry about checking it in and checking out files. And so we'll highlight exactly what that means once we get into the software. Now, I do want to, before I hop into the software, kind of open it up for questions. There is a questions window within the GoToWebinar interface, and feel free to use that to ask questions. I'll be monitoring that as we go, and we'll answer the ones that fit within the script kind of in sequence. And then toward the end, we'll also have a question section as well, where I'll kind of answer the ones that weren't kind of strung into the outline. That being said, let's go ahead and hop into the software. So for those of you that are brand new to Review, this is the Review interface. So it may look a little bit differently depending on the settings that you have enabled on your individual machine. But the main idea, or kind of the starting point for everyone, is this command bar at the top. What this command bar does is essentially gives me access to a lot of the main features, just like really any other Windows program. Each of these subsequent icons that you're seeing here on the right-hand side are related to the menu that I'm picking there at the top. Now you'll notice, for example, the measurements or the markups panel, all of those are grayed out currently, and that's because I don't have a document open. I'm not able to mark anything up if I don't have a document open to do that marking up. Now you'll notice, and these again may be a little bit different on your interface compared to mine. These are the toolbars that are specific to the particular profile that I'm in. And so you'll notice that there are toolbars on the right-hand side as well as across the top. Now these toolbars are kind of neat because I can move them around, for example. I can go ahead and hide them. So with just a right-click, I can go ahead and remove certain items. Maybe I'll remove the edit one that you see there, or I'll add it back in. And so, again, this is all driven based on the profile that I'm in. Now, currently, I'm in the punch profile. We're going to hop into design review to start, and then we'll get back into the punch profile once we get into that punching process. Now, you'll notice when I changed my profile, it also changed or kind of popped out these two panels here on the left and the right. And what these panels do, kind of give me access, again, to a lot of the features that are a little bit more document-specific, if you will. And so if I want to search a particular document, I just select the little search icon, which is my little binoculars. If I want to change some properties or settings, I use the blue gear wheel. Or if I want to access some files, I do so here from the right-hand side, or excuse me, left-hand side. Now, there's another really, really valuable panel that a lot of people don't know about, and this bottom panel here is the markups list. Again, this is really, really valuable, specifically when it comes to punch, as it allows me to start tracking all of my data in rows and columns, just like any other spreadsheet. But it's also kind of a two-way communication with the PDF itself. So I'm going to go ahead and stop kind of talking at you and get into the software itself, or excuse me, into a document. Now what I did is just opened a brand new file, kind of a blank slate, 8.5 by 11 digital sheet of paper, if you will. So if I zoom out and minimize that page, you'll notice it looks just like a sheet of computer paper that would be on my desk. And this will function just like any other PDF. I can go ahead and move it around, zoom in and out, just seeing that process there using my mouse wheel. But I can go ahead and start marking up as well. Now, before I get into that, there's a couple other items that I want to show off. One is this tab access. It's kind of a nondescript orange triangle that a lot of people either don't notice or kind of forget about. But what this does is allows me to see the master list of all of the features that are built into my instance of Review. So dependent on what edition of Review you have, you may or may not have all of these features. But for example, if I want to pop open the layers panel, I just select that from the master list and it will go ahead and populate it within one of the panels. I mentioned, for example, the search feature. If you look to the right-hand side as I click this, it will change to my search functions there. So again, pretty basic, but I want to make sure that is very clear as we get into this. The other item I want to mention is the right click. So for those of you that are Windows folks, you definitely understand the ability to right click and kind of pop open, excuse me, a context menu. And what this context menu is going to allow me to do is give me essentially all of the options I have available to me wherever my cursor lands. So for example, if I come up to the document tab here and right click, I can actually explore the document folder, save as, copy the path do all sorts of things. Actually, split vertical is pretty neat because now I can have two documents at the same time, or I can go ahead and unsplit. Now, on these panels themselves, the little headers, I can kind of hide or show other items that will, again, relate back to this tab access. So with that, I'm just going to place some basic markups and kind of go through that process to give everyone, again, a little bit of a baseline. The idea here is to kind of give everyone an even playing field, even if you're new to review or if you're a pro. Kind of stay with me here, I promise. We'll get into the punch workflow. But we're going to start in the markups command bar across the top. Now, I do have markup tools here in my tool set on the right. Those are available as well. So, for example, if I just want to place a text box here, I can literally just click and drag the shape of the text box that I want. So, and then I just type out the word text box. I click outside the box, and you'll see now that I have that text box available to me with those resizable pull tabs here. I can slide them in and out. I can go ahead and rotate this. Oops, let me click that there and rotate it 90 degrees, rotate it back to 0, and translate it around. So a markup is essentially ink that's floating above the page, if you will, and we'll show the difference between that and content here in just a moment. Now I'm working on a laptop that I'm not using the touch interface, I'm using a mouse. But I can actually utilize a pen, for example, especially if I'm on a touch tablet, such as an iPad or a Surface Pro, something along those lines, and spell out certain items. Now, in this case, each of these pen strokes is a little bit different, but if I were writing fast enough with a pen, for example, it would actually auto-recognize that text for me, which is pretty neat. And I'm not going to go through all these markups, but I do want to show kind of one from each location. For example, just an arrow or dimension, which is very neat. Now, this is separate from a measurement. What the dimension does is provides two constraints, and then I can provide whatever text I'd like. So I can go ahead and place that text in there, and it's not actually measuring anything, whereas the measurement tools themselves will allow you to calibrate and scale certain items on the drawing. Whoops. Okay. Back to the markups. We've done lines, shapes. So, for example, polygons, I can go ahead and put as many sides onto this shape as I'd like. I can convert any of these to arc if I want to go ahead and fine-tune this a little bit and do rounded edges and things like that. I also have the clouds and callouts that we'll get into probably within the punch process. Now, if I want to scale certain items, I have the sketch to scale items. I can embed images, which would allow me to, for example, pick an image off of my computer and place that on the page. It comes over very high fidelity. It's basically having a JPEG on my document. I can also utilize the camera, the webcam, which we will touch on again in the punch process. And then, for example, hyperlinks, attachments, stamps. Again, we're not going to get too deep into these, but want to give everyone a baseline. Stamps are pretty neat because you can kind of customize what they look like, and then it will also pull over, for example, dynamic text if you'd like that included as well, which you'll see this, the date and time match what my computer is running on, which is Central Time. Okay. That being said, let's kind of transition a little bit into a true document. Let's open a regular file here. Now I'm just going to open an architectural file, kind of a reference plan. And this is a great example of something I would want to do my punch walk on because there's not a whole lot of noise or frills going on with this document. A lot of times when you do the punch process and you select a document that has a lot of really dense grid lines, or maybe it's an MEP file that it's showing all the different outlets, or excuse me, the circuits and piping runs and things like that. It may be a little bit cumbersome to lay a bunch of punch marks on top of it. So typically what I suggest is start with kind of a light reference plan, kind of a plan view, if you will. And this will allow you to place markups a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to go ahead and actually select all these markups at once. Go ahead and copy them over with a right click and copy. And let's go ahead and just paste them anywhere in the middle of this, right click and paste. So you'll notice that they come over a little bit, what seems a little bit more grouped than was the case on that white sheet. However, that is because these sheets are different. So this digital paper, if you will, that document 1, the blank plan was 8.5 by 11, whereas this one, this new reference plan, is a full ARC-E, I believe, sheet file, which is 42 by 30. So now I have all those same markups over here on this page. I can move them around. And again, this is because it's essentially floating above the page, whereas all these black lines that are the drafted sheet or the drawing are content of the page. And so I just want to make that differentiation for those that are newer to the PDF realm. Markups essentially allow me to continue to change them over time, whereas content is a little bit more permanent. Now, I can lock markups and I can also edit content, but we're not going to get too deep into that aspect of PDF today. Okay, well, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is actually kind of customize some of this information. Where did that... let's place a cloud on here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and actually place a cloud plus, which will allow me to ask or identify a location on the drawing. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and locate around this desk here, and then I can go ahead and attach some sort of text onto it. So I'm just going to place a text box that will tie back to that cloud. And let's go ahead and say which airlines check-in is this? Now you'll notice it actually even does spell check for me, so I can go ahead and kind of retroactively fix my information so I still sound professional as I'm placing these markups. And you'll also notice I can move this text box or this call out around, and it's always going to tie back to that text box, or excuse me, the cloud that it's pointing to. So a really neat function to kind of tie all of that information together. Okay, now I have a lot of stuff on the page. Let's go ahead and select all. So I just did a Control-A on my keyboard. Let's pop open the Properties panel. So the Properties panel, you'll see that it popped open on the right-hand side. And what this is going to do for me is allow me to change the aesthetic properties and actually some of the data as well behind each one of these markups. So we'll get into the data here in just a bit, but I do want to touch on the process of marking these up, or excuse me, changing the markups. So let's change the color scheme. As of right now, everything's kind of a bland red, so let's give it a blue color here. I can give everything a blue fill as well, or maybe a teal. Now you'll notice anything that does have kind of broader fill, such as this cloud, is automatically going to become opaque. And in certain portions, that's going to be great. You may want opaque lines, but in this particular case, I don't want the cloud to cover up the desk area that I was calling out. So I have the option to select highlight. That will allow the content to pop back through, but while still giving that very deep teal color. Now I do have the option to change the fill color. You'll notice that it kind of lightens up, and I'll put it to, for example, a 30% fill as opposed to 100 that it was before. Now the last thing I'm going to change before I get too much further is the text color, which is currently red. I don't like that. I'm going to change it to a black. Okay, now I've gone ahead and made all those changes. And you'll notice that it edited everything that had colors to edit. Now it's not going to edit the picture itself because there's really no drafted information. It's essentially just a JPEG. Okay, so I've gone through and customized these and have the look and feel that I'd like. Now I want to kind of get into the discussion of saving all this information for later reuse. So to do that, I'm going to come back to my tab access and pop open my tool chest. Now the tool chest is typically placed in the left-hand panel, but this can always be customized. If I want to place it over to the right, I just click and drag, and this will now be available in the right-hand panel. I can always click and drag to place it back, and this is all just kind of personal preference to customize my interface. Now you'll notice here within this this tool chest, there's a few sections or what we call tool sets, and each one is kind of customized for individual purpose. The one that I'm going to start with is the recent tools, and what that's going to do is allow me to copy anything that I've placed down, obviously, recently. So, for example, that text box that I placed before, if I want an exact copy, I can do so and just dip into this location here. Now, if I want to reuse this over and over and over again, I can go ahead and click and drag and place it into, for example, my tools, or I can go ahead and drag it into one of the other tool sets, for example, the contractor tool set. Now, you'll notice, for example, some of these are symbols as opposed to a tiny little picture, which let me increase the size so you can see a little bit better. And this will be in what's called properties mode. So properties mode allows me to utilize the exact same properties that I defined before, but I can define new information. So if I want to change this to my name, I can do so from here as well. But it's not going to be an exact copy of that item that I utilized before. Now, if I do want to put this into drawing mode, I can do so, and that will be the exact copy, including the text, including the size. All of that arrangement will be copied over. So I do have a few tool sets down here that were pre-existing in this particular profile: architect, contractor, and engineer. And each one of these are kind of custom built with some information built into them. So, for example, I have sequence tools here that will automatically count for me if I forget how to count on my own. If I come back to it and start placing again, it will pick right back up where it left off, which is pretty neat. So I can go ahead and actually sequence stuff, place weld markers, do all sorts of things that are pretty critical. And you'll notice all of these are kind of themed, color-coded. Another extension of this, or kind of a neat property, is it's also adding a customized subject. Now, we'll get into subjects and other data here in just a moment, but I do want to kind of highlight that these are going to be a little bit different than some of these other items. For example, anything that I placed previously, from example, the markups list, won't have a very smart subject. It'll basically just be the name of the tool. So we're going to want to add information later on in these cases. So in this case, this is a punch webinar, so I'm going to actually change my profile under View and Profile, do the little drop down here, and I'm going to select my punch profile. Now, this is the one I started in, so you'll notice that it has that toolbar strip across the top, and so I could go ahead and actually add or remove those items. So I can do so from the toolbar function. Let's get rid of all of those. And that will give me a little bit more screen real estate and seems a little bit cleaner to me. But if I come back to the tool chest, you'll notice that these tools are a little bit different than what we saw before. It's no longer the architect and engineer and contractor review tool sets. It actually has these little red circles with 2 letters in them. These are my punch keys that I'm going to start using for my punch process. So any one of these can just be placed on the page. Now, each one of these, again, is kind of a shorthand version of what it is I'm trying to convey. If I hover over them, you can see it gives me what the label is, which is LB, as well as what the comment that should be included. So instead of when I'm out in the field punching and walking and typing and everything else, I don't have to type out light bulb missing install 47 different times. I can literally just use that over and over and over again. So, and actually, let me pop up in my status bar as well. Very neat function if you are walking around and you're using a certain key over and over again. For example, I know cleaning has always been an issue. There's fingerprints everywhere. I have the option to turn on my reuse at the bottom here, and this will allow me to literally just click and place, and I don't have to go back and into my tool set and click every single time to add it. I can literally just copy down. Now, I can also have a lot of fun and place a smiley face here and everything that goes with it, and typically my boss would be mad if I did that. Now, if there's something that's very, very important, I can always resize these as well. So maybe there's a missing faceplate, and that is a big no-no, so let's go ahead and place that. What I can do is take these little pull tabs, make it nice and big. Now that obviously loses a little bit of the visual context of where it's located, but it also kind of makes it very evident that that's a critical piece. Okay, so I have these, and these are these tool sets here. These are always kind of pre-populated within Review, which is great in certain aspects because I have a place to start and really just kind of walk out and start punching. But I do want a little bit of customization as well. And to do that, we would need to, kind of customize these tool sets from within this interface. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink these up, and I'm going to come to my toolset manager here. So what I have the option to do within this is modify or add any tool sets that you see in here. You'll notice that several of these do not have checkboxes. So if I add the curves item, for example, you'll notice that that is available now in the left-hand panel. If I get rid of it, it disappears. But I can also add brand new ones. So let's go ahead and call this CTC Punch. I'm going to uncheck Show in All Profiles because this will only be a punch tool set. I only want it in the punch profile. So go ahead and click OK, and it'll save it in the default location within my program files. You'll now see that I have a new tool set that is blank down here in the bottom, and this will kind of be my blank slate to start adding things to. So let's go ahead and click OK. And I can kind of cherry pick certain items that I want to add to it. For example, fingerprints. I'm going to be flagging that all over the place. So let's go ahead and right-click, Add to Tool Chest, and then we'll pick the CTC Punch. You'll notice that that populates there. Now, I also have the option, for example, from Recent Tools. Again, click and drag the missing faceplate item. Now it'll pull over with giant lettering system. So that's an option as well. Again, I can go ahead and drag any of these other items from Recent Tools down. I can also do so from any other existing tool set, so just click and drag, and those will start populating. Now, again, I don't know necessarily what these items are at a glance, so I either have to hover over them, or I have the option from the blue gear wheel to set to detail mode instead of symbol mode. Detail mode will actually give me a preview of what it is that I'm grabbing as I create these individual tool sets. So, for example, I can see the subject is electrical, and the comment is missing faceplate. The subject is lighting fixture stays on, repair, sconce not level adjust. All of that is very, again, rich data that is coming over as I place any one of these items. Now, I can see that information directly from the interface, as can anyone else that I'm working with, just by hovering over any one of these items. You'll notice that it gives me a little preview of what that's supposed to mean, and I can look at that on each one of these particular items, including all of my fingerprint smiley faces that I created here. Now, to expedite this process as well, I need to start creating some of my own. Now, I don't have to go through and draw a circle and then put a snippet of text and then edit the comment and subject for each one of these. That would really be kind of a time suck. So let's go ahead and actually come up to my toolset manager here at the top, the blue gear wheel, select whichever toolset I want to modify, and then do just that. So I have it highlighted, I select modify, and I now have my modification view of what it is that I'm looking at. So you can see here it's essentially just a miniature spreadsheet of what these items are. I can click through and get a little preview of what they include as well. And so I can kind of at a glance see all this information. But I can also, the very powerful button here to punch key import. So if I have a spreadsheet ready to go, I can go ahead and just click import, but I need, in this case, to export first, do my edits in Excel, and then populate them back in. So let's go ahead and export this to my desktop. Go ahead and click Save. And now let's go ahead and open that file in Excel. Now this will come over as a CSV file, and so it's, again, editable in Excel. Any one of these columns is the exact same information that I was seeing back in Review. You'll notice cleaning and fingerprints with an FP is the first line item, cleaning FP fingerprints. So I'm going to use this as a template and start adding information here, and maybe this is something with plumbing, and we'll just give this a giant P as the symbol, and we'll say leak found. I'm also going to give one for myself, just because Why not? And we'll just call this Nick is the best. Woohoo! Okay, now I've made those edits. I need to import them back into Review. Excel actually doesn't really like a CSV format. It's kind of an older format. It likes to be a little bit fancier. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And there's some issues that I need to actually save as and make sure that it's saved as a CSV, comma delimited, and we'll go ahead and call this CTC punch. Click Save, yes. And it gives me this little pop-up that says, do you actually want to use this format? The answer is yes. And then I go and close out. It's going to give me, do you want to save the changes? Yes. So I have to do this twice for whatever reason. It's a quirk of Excel. But now as I come back to punch key import, I select that particular tool, select OK, and it will populate with that information. Now you'll notice it did doubles on this, so I really should, in this case, clear first, and then run the punch key import, and it will only pull over the fresh items. So you'll notice now I have the plumbing and the Nick Decker punch keys available. So go ahead and click OK, and now I can go ahead and place the ND on the page. If I hover over it, it says Nick is the best. So I now have a customized tool set, and it's a little bit of a process to set these up, for myself. But once I do so, I want everyone on the rest of the project or the rest of the company be working off of the same sheet music, essentially. So to do that, I can actually share these tool sets with everyone else, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel and do all the other importing processes that go along with it. And to do that, I can come over here under this blue gear wheel within this tool set, click Save, and click Export. Now, Export will save it as I believe, a BTX file. It's a Bluebeam specific file set. If I populate over here, you'll notice that I have that punch profile item that I exported, as well as that CTC punch. Anyone that you share that with just needs to double-click that item. So, in fact, I can go ahead and send this out via email, attach it to an email, for example, and it would distribute to everyone. They just double-click the attachment, and it will automatically upload in their instance of Review. I also have the option to share it, for example, on a network drive, so I can go ahead and map this to a particular location within network drive, and it will start being, allow everyone else to reference that, and I can update changes as the project progresses, and it will push out to everyone else as well. Now, a lot of times when you're working with external partners, you don't have the option to force people to install items on their computer or whatever it may be, or you can't map them to a network shared drive. So the other option, and we'll touch on this in a bit, but I can go ahead under Markup and add an attachment. Now the attachment item, I'm going to go ahead and attach a tool set. Click where I'd like to place this, and this will actually be a file embedded inside a PDF. A PDF essentially is just a package or a container that will house all this other information, such as the markups, such as the document itself, but it can also house other files. So I'll pop open this Properties panel, change the icon to the actual tool set so everyone knows what it is. And now I can, at a glance, see this information. Now when I share this with someone, so if I click Email, attach it to an email, and I'll just send it to myself, for example, they would have not only the PDF and the drawing, but they're also going to get that tool set attached with it, and so they just double-click on it, and it will open, again, in their instance of Review. So we'll touch on how to do that within the session here in just a second. Okay, so I feel pretty good about all this this tool set information. I've gone through the customization of all of this. So let's pop open this bottom panel. This bottom panel, again, is really, really valuable because I have a lot of information going on this page. So you'll see that this is my list of information. All of my markups that are on the page become a row within this list. Also, I can see, for example, what page these items are on. Now, this is a one-page document, so they're all on the exact same page. But I can also pick up on any sort of commentary. Now, With the ones that I placed before, such as the sequence, it doesn't give me a whole lot, at least not for this particular workflow. But these punch keys, for example, it's going to give me a lot more information than I'm visually seeing on the page as well. So if I want to see where any of these fingerprint items are, or maybe the missing faceplate, I can click on that comment. It's going to take me to that location within the interface. The same thing happens in reverse. Basically, if I select any one of these particular markups, it will highlight that line item within the spreadsheet. So this kind of becomes a cohesive two-way communication between my data and my visual representation on the PDF, which is really, really neat as you start trying to track all this information. So from here, we can start actually working with this data. So you'll notice, for example, the subject item over here, the header is blue, and that means that it's actually sorted by this information. So it sorts, for example, A to Z or Z to A, ascending or descending. But also beyond that, I can sort any other column. So for example, if I want to sort by comment, I can go ahead and group, all the fingerprint items are together. I can go ahead and select any one of these and do something with them. So for example, if I want to assign a status or a responsibility, maybe there's someone that's responsible for that particular item, I can assign that to them. Or I can go ahead and actually maybe apply a layer to these. So I can right-click, add a layer, and we'll go ahead and just call this cleaning. Now I can go ahead and turn those on and off. They will appear or disappear, which is pretty neat as well. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is all the remainder of these columns that are in here. So status, for example, is currently blank, and we'll come back to that in a moment, but we also have some other ones such as space, responsibility. Now I am going to open a different file here that has some spaces already pre-populated. I didn't want to get it too cluttered when we introduced this, but there's some really neat stuff to be had with a drawing that has spaces already. So you'll see here, in fact, if I come over to my tab access and pop open my spaces panel, I have a lot of rooms essentially predefined. So any one of these, the patio, for example, if I come over to the patio space, it's going to be the exact extents of the of that particular area. And then as I place a markup in that item, say, for example, there's a clean foreign substance off the surface, and maybe that's on that concrete deck within the patio, you'll notice that that item actually has a space populated, telling me that that markup is in the patio, whereas a certain other item, maybe there's a wipe down, and that's going to be on the ramp. Now, I'm going to go ahead and carry over all of these other markups and paste them on this page, and you'll now see, I'll save it to my desktop really quick. Oh, interesting that they pulled over there. Let's copy all of the punch keys really quick. Sorry. Copy those, and we'll try and paste them over. If not, we can always do, there we go. Oh, no. Let's save this to my desktop, and then we'll do an import. So I can go ahead and actually import comments as well from that particular sheet, and you'll notice that they now carry over onto the page. I was trying to get a little bit of a shortcut, but I had to go through the import process. Okay, now I have all this information. Again, the spaces column is now populated because every single one of these items lands in a space. Now, certain items will be spanning a space, and so those will not be assigned to one space or another, which is kind of a reason for these punch keys. Because they are kind of so simple and small, they fit very well into a space, and you're able to define the location very easily. Now, with this, I'm going to go ahead and actually hide my my cleaning items, but I can also filter those items out as well. So I can filter, select the filter item, and then from this drop down here, I can go ahead and select all. Well, let's go to subject, for example. I just want to see the lighting items, and it will bubble up to the top all of those. So let's go ahead and copy that. Actually, let's place this whole bunch of other items on the page so we can kind of start populating this. You'll notice that as things are filtered out, they become grayed out in this case. Let's undo the filter here. And you'll notice the list obviously kind of dynamically updates at that point. So what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to start statusing and assigning these particular items as some sort of responsibility. So I'm going to sort by status and click on each one. Oh, this is a lighting item. Let's go ahead and accept or reject these items. But I also have the option to create custom statuses. So I'm going to create a custom status, and we'll do something just for punch. And within these punch keys, we'll go ahead and say that this is assigned, and we'll give that a color of purple. We'll do an in progress. We'll give that a dark yellow, and very ugly yellow apparently. And we'll do a complete, and this will be the green light. Something is done. So let's go ahead and click OK. Now, as I come in and status any one of these, you'll notice the options are signed, in progress, or complete. And as I assign those, you'll notice the color changes as well. So that's assigned, that's complete. And these items will start to populate very quickly. And do that customization as well of the colors. Now, I can also, assign a lot of these at once. So let's go ahead and multi-select. Say that these are all assigned. You'll notice that those colors change on every single one that I selected. I can do the same thing for everything else. And I can start doing this population of all this information, again, very quickly. And I see that I have about 8 or 10 more items to do some sort of status, and now everything is either signed, completed, or in progress. So what's great about the status, not only is it tracking this information, authors, dates and times, things like that, but if there's something that, for example, is signed, and I come back and I see, oh, well, that's now in progress, they're changing it, it will update, and it will also, if I come down to the in progress items, did I assign that in progress? Thought I did. Yes, there it is. It will actually show me the progress of that particular item. So it says it was assigned on this date and time. A couple minutes later, it was in progress. And then if I were to change this again, the status is now complete. I will see all 3 of those statuses as well. So the last piece of this, before I get into the reporting, is the ability to assign custom columns. So within my column manager, I can select a custom column and assign certain people to this. Now I'm going to change this to a choice, but this would work very similar to the statuses. I'm going to go ahead and assign myself a name as well as a couple of my colleagues. Now with a double click, I can go ahead and assign who is responsible for each item, or I can do this in mass quantity as well, just like I did with status. I can multi-select and assign everything to probably Drew in this case, and he would be a busy individual. I'll assign the last couple to Amy, And I can now sort and see how many Amy has. Drew has most of the list, and then I believe I did not give myself any. So let's go ahead and assign one of these to myself, and that will kind of round out the list here. Okay. So last thing I'm going to do within this markups list before I get into Studio is the ability to run a summary. Now I'm just going to do this really quickly just so you can see this process, but I can send this, for example, to CSV, which would allow me to export this to Excel. Now it's going to capture all the columns that you see here, and it's going to keep that sort function that I have going, or any filtering that I may be included in this. It will only filter or export the data that is not filtered in this case, which you'll see here. I'll go ahead and click OK. Let's send it to my desktop, and it will now open in Excel with all this information. So you'll see here I have, again, those changes in statuses with dates and times, things like that. Whoops. Including commentary, who's responsible, all this data is at my fingertips, including what room it's in. Now the spaces are pretty neat. They can carry over directly from Revit if you have the option of creating, if you have the Revit model, these can all be carried over into PDF utilizing the Bluebeam plugin. All right, now let's go ahead and get into Studio. If you don't have experience in Bluebeam Studio, I highly suggest. We have some great videos online, and CTC has had some webinars about the subject. So there's a lot of rich information out there to look into that. Due to time, I'm just going to pop into a Studio project that I have with a particular file, and you'll notice that this file is very similar to the one I had before, but with essentially no markups. Now, the one markup I added was the profile, because I want everyone to be in the same profile, the same punch keys, all of that, and so I can attach that profile to the sheet. And then as people come in here, they can double-click, use this profile, and place all their punch keys. The other thing I need to do before I get into this too much further, start this review process, is the ability to, customize this sheet with all those columns and statuses and things. Now, currently this sheet is locked, so I need to check it out. Now I have the option to create, for example, a punch. So we'll just do in progress with a color of orange, and a complete with a color of green. Great, click OK. This is now embedded in this particular sheet. I have all my spaces set up that you're seeing here. Again, I can view that from my spaces panel, and so I can see each one of these items. Let's see, inbound baggage. Each one of those is selectable, and will start categorizing my information for me. Okay, the last thing I need to do is set up any sort of custom columns. And as you see here, I have a responsibility column. Again, I would need to modify this, create a choice, and let's go ahead and put, again, same three options, Nick, Drew, and Amy. Go ahead and click OK. And I now have those items available to me. What this is going to do for me is, as I send this to a Studio session, all of the functionality that you're seeing me do now will be locked. So I don't have the option to make these changes once it's in the live environment, so I need to do all that ahead of time. I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and check it in. Say, ready for session. Click check in. This is now checked in and ready for people to check it out that have access to the Studio project. In this case, we're not going to do the review in the Studio project because that does take a check-in, check-out status. Instead, I'm going to send this to a session. We'll go ahead and call this the punch process session. And this will bring it into a live virtual conference room, if you will. In fact, let me close that item and open the checked out file, if you will, kind of the live environment file. And you'll notice that I see who is attending, which is currently just myself, what files are in here, and then the records list is what is happening within this. Okay, now I'm going to utilize these tools that I established before. Go ahead and place all this information, and if you keep your eye on the right-hand side, you'll notice that this list is populating with all of my punch keys. Now I'm just kind of placing some random punch keys around here. And you'll notice each one of these is located within the interface. Now, if I click on any one of these line items, it will give me the exact view that I had when I made this. Now, to take this a step further, I'm going to transfer over to a second computer I have in this room here and do a sudo punch with myself. So give me a second to log in. And I will be on a Surface tablet, so I have the touch interface as well on this other device. Now, I do need to allow myself into this, so I'm going to go ahead and allow. And then as I join from my other device, I can go ahead and just type in the code. 992.016. Okay, I'm now joining. It'll take a second, and you'll notice that my other my other personality, if you will, has just joined this room, and so I have the option to start reviewing the same document that I'm currently viewing and place all sorts of other punch keys and things that I'm working with. So as I zoom in, maybe I'm going to work in the right wing here. So just placing some other items on the page, and you'll notice again that list is populating down here at the bottom. Now, if I click on any one of these, it's going to give me again the view that I had on my other device, my other personality, if you will, is working here on the right-hand side, and each one of these is locked because I did it on a different device under a different account. And so this is a great way, again, to ensure this information is being taken care of. Now, I can go through and status and do all sorts of other stuff, but I already showed that. What I'm going to do in this case is assume that all this information has been completed. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this session out. I'm going to overwrite existing, generate a report because I want to understand what has been included as we went through this punch process. And I could have been in the field doing all sorts of stuff. Now, if there is something, I do want to kind of take one little backtrack. I didn't deal with this at the time, but if there's some visual context or something that needs to be included, I can do so and add what's called a capture. And this will essentially become a little camera lens item that will, oh boy, the review's crashing on me. Sorry, folks. This will take a second to reload, but the great thing about working on this cloud environment is I'm not going to lose any of my work. I do need to log in, however. Okay, so now I still have that sheet checked out. That the capture is there, and I can click on it and see the visual context of what it was that I was working with. And so this will, again, bring back into the office all this visual context that I was working with. So the last thing I'm going to do is send out a report of what has happened on this sheet. Now I can, again, organize all this information and send the summary out directly from the markups list. But in this case, I want a little bit finer control. So under File, Batch, and not Print, sorry, File Summary, I can go ahead and run a summary of the file that I'm working with here. Now what this is going to do for me is it kind of puts me through a four-step process. I upload the files that I want to run this report on, which can be a whole bunch all at once. Pick the columns that I want pulled into this particular report, So, for example, I don't need creation date and date. Those seem to be the same right now. I don't need the lock or the check mark. But the rest of this looks pretty good. Now I can go ahead and actually sort by, for example, subject or responsibility. If there were statuses, I can do that as well. Now I don't have status data on this sheet. But I can also filter out, for example, I don't want certain items. I can go ahead and filter out my alter ego, if you will, and that would be filtered out from the list. So this fourth option, or kind of fourth page within this reporting structure, is the ability to kind of fine-tune how I want these reports to look. And I do want to create individual reports for these by subject. So per cleaning, per painting, each one of those will kind of come out as their own that I can go ahead and send to those pertinent parties. I could go ahead, import some sort of company letterhead that I want this to land on. In this case, I'm just going to click Done. This will run the process for me. In this case, create 5 reports that you're seeing here, and each one of these is an individual report that shows these particular locations. Okay, so I'm out of time. I do want to pop back to close this particular webinar out. I'm going to stick around for questions, I promise. But this does conclude the AIA Continuing Education webinar. For more information after today, feel free to contact CTC at sales@cadtechnologycenter.com. I am going to address the questions window at this point. So you're welcome to stick on for a few minutes and type questions in the window. Otherwise, have a fantastic day. Thank you.